Hi, what you're looking at is a pair of in-wall stereo music intercom stations from the early 1960s. This is a model 2411 and this is a model 2412, and these speakers are used exclusively with the 2400 stereo music intercom system. The 2400 system was a showcase piece for NuTone when it was new. Everything about the system was designed to be the very highest quality available at the time. We repair a certain number of 2400 system components every year. People that have systems like that, most of them understand how special they are. One of the parts of the system that sometimes can use some attention are the remote stations. And what I'm talking about on these it has primarily to do with what's on the back of the stations. So what you have here are two 8-inch speaker cones. One of the things that's unique about the 2400 system, and it's the only system that this applies to, is it's the only system that NuTone ever made that uses 8-ohm speaker cones. Now, those of you who are into home audio and home stereo systems, and I'm not talking about that surround sound 5.2 stuff, I'm talking about real stereo 2-channel stuff. Everybody knows that really super high-end home audio uses 4-ohm, and really good quality high fidelity stereo systems use 8-ohm speaker cones, and that's what NuTone did also. If we do a little research into these and we look at the NuTone catalog, it says wall speakers are 8-inch coaxial type with mechanical crossover and pre-wired harness. Well, we don't care about the pre-wired harness, we care about the speaker cones. There isn't any technical information about these specific speaker cones. One of the disadvantages that I have is these systems were all made in the early 1960s, and I've never seen any of these brand new. So I don't really know how they really sounded when they were brand new, because speakers are all about the sound. People that are into speakers, or speaker cones I should say, when you talk to them, it's a lot like when you talk to people about wine. They use a lot of really descriptive terms and they paint a picture about what it sounds like. And that's a little hard to do sometimes, and I'm not really one of those guys. I don't do that. I look at things more from a technical point of view. But I'm pretty sure that what we have here are a nice quality 8-inch mid-range speaker. A mid-range speakers, they're the best compromise of a speaker. They're not too bassy. The highs aren't too high. They suit most people who listen to them, because you have to remember, if you're manufacturing an intercom system for someone's home, you have to have broad market appeal. You can't be too one way or the other, or there will be people that won't want to buy it. In the catalog, it mentions 8-inch coaxial type with mechanical crossover. So I'm not exactly clear on what the mechanical crossover thing is, because a coaxial speaker implies that there are two speaker cones within one speaker frame, and I'm not sure what the mechanical crossover thing is about exactly. So I have an idea. Why don't we go ahead and take one of these apart and take a look at what's on the other side. We're going to take apart the 2412 because it's easier to do than this one. So let's go ahead, I'm going to take it apart and we'll take it off and let's see what's on the other side. So I removed the 4 nuts that hold it on, and let's go ahead and lift it off and see what we have. So if we turn it over, what we have here is what looks to me like a fairly standard 8-inch speaker cone. It has these ribbed portions here in the center, and I'm sure there's some audio or acoustical reason for doing that. And then you have the pretty standard sort of folded edge here as it goes into the basket, and it's all glued in place, and this light brown part here is glued on to help hold it onto the basket. And here in the center we have this little second cone, and I'm pretty sure the second cone is the coaxial part of it. I know in some circles this little cone right here in the middle, it's often referred to as a whizzer, and it has some audio use in it. It helps amplify the highs, I think, or the high, mids, and highs, and creates a different sound than if it wasn't there. I assume that it is a coaxial type. I'm sure it's still not clear on what the mechanical crossover thing is, because You know, it's a pretty standard 8-inch speaker cone. NuTone made cones that looked very much like this in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and into the 2000s. So, not being a speaker aficionado, I'm not sure what they were trying to do here, but I think part of what they were trying to do was develop an image about the equipment that they were making and selling, and it sounds really good in the catalog, and that's always really important to sales. While all of this may be interesting at one level, these systems give you an opportunity that you don't have with other systems. And the opportunity is that these can be replaced. I have some secondhand experience with that. A number of years ago, I repaired and rebuilt a 2400 system for a customer who lives in Anchorage, Alaska. He sent me the amplifier and the tuner, and I rebuilt them and made them work again. He was definitely an audiophile kind of guy, and he laughs when I talk to him because he said that he actually spent almost as much on shipping as he did on the repair, and it would have been cheaper if he had just bought the equipment, a seat on the airplane, and flew them over than it was to ship them back and forth. And one of the things that he did in the rooms that were most important to him, which I believe were the great room, the family room, the living room, and I think maybe his office. He wanted to have better quality sound than what came out of his original NuTone speakers. So with some work and some consideration, he found modern replacement speaker cones that suited his desires for what he wanted his system to sound like. And again, the advantage of this is a really standard size speaker cone. It's a standard diameter. It has fairly standard mounting points here for modern speakers, and you can buy replacement speaker cones and they just bolt onto the back of the panel like that. Put the nuts on and you're all done. And there are a lot of choices. I remember when I talked to him about him doing this, we had a long discussion about not going crazy with what he bought for replacement speakers. The going crazy part has to do a lot with the size of the magnets that are on speakers. If you look online, you can find a lot of places that you can buy replacement speaker cones, and a lot of them, they have much larger magnets of variety of different sizes. And the way you look at magnets on a speaker cone, the magnet is like the engine of the speaker cone. Inside the magnet is the voice coil that the audio signal goes through, and it creates a opposing magnetic force, and that's what moves the diaphragm back and forth to produce the sound. These speakers have fairly small magnets. The magnet is actually this round cylinder right in here, and you can see the screwdriver kind of grabs on and sticks to it. So it's a fairly small magnet, and the reason it's a fairly small magnet is these type of magnets, this was still a fairly new thing in the 60s. You know, what most people don't realize is if you go back maybe 20 years before this speaker was made, there were no permanent magnet speaker cones. They had big coils to make electromagnets, and those coils would be incorporated into the design of the amplifier it was driving and so forth. It's somewhat complicated, and we're not going to get into that. But permanent magnets like this that are used in speaker cones, that was still a relatively new thing. And this maybe back in the day, back in the 1960s, maybe this was considered to be a fair-sized magnet for back in the day. But nowadays, you can buy speaker cones, you know, the magnets are usually rated in how much they weigh. So you can buy speakers with 2-pound magnets and 3-pound magnets and 6-pound magnets, and I've seen some online where the magnets are as big around as a speaker cone, and it's like, let's not get silly, okay? Because you always have to consider how much power you have to drive the speaker from the amplifier that it's hooked to. The power output on a 2400 amplifier is about 20 watts per channel. And you might think that, well, that's not very much. I've got a surround sound amplifier and it says on the box it's 510 watts per channel and it's 5 channels and it's 2500 watts. Okay, that's all just marketing hoo-ha. That's not real. This is a real solid 20 watts per channel, and they're tube watts. And tube watts, even though they're the same as solid state watts, they're different because they're tube watts. What you want to do, if you want to improve the sound quality, you can look for some nice medium-sized replacement speaker cones. Now, the fella in Alaska, he chose well, he said, and he bought replacement speaker cones and installed them in the rooms that were most important to him, and he said it produced an amazing difference in sound. It's a worthwhile and not terribly expensive thing to do. Now, a good quality pair of replacement speaker cones, you might spend anywhere from $100 to $150 for a pair of them, maybe more. There are lots of choices. And again, you don't want to get silly about it. You want to be reasonable about what you do. Read the reviews, and I actually looked online at a couple places that I deal with that sell replacement speaker cones. And like I said in the beginning of the video, people's reviews on speaker cones get pretty flowery and pretty subjective about the coloration of the sound, and it's like people that talk about wine. It's hard to know. You have to, I think the real thing is you have to find something that suits you, and how you do that without hearing them first, I don't really know. But I think if you keep everything sort of in the middle, or maybe a little more this way or a little more that way, without getting too extreme about it, you're probably going to be okay. The other thing about these speaker cones, which I've always felt is true, the paper on these, I've worked on enough older systems that the paper on these, it becomes really brittle as it gets old, as it ages. You know, this particular station, this one was made in 1960. It's almost 60 years old. I don't think a 60-year-old paper speaker cone is going to sound the same as it did when it was 60 days old. So I think a new one is a good idea sometimes, especially in the rooms that matter the most to you. So it's just an idea, it's just a thought. Maybe one day, if I ever get around to it, maybe I'll choose a pair and hook them up and bring them here to the shop and see what happens and see what they sound like. It's not a good, fair test when we work on people's equipment because we need to hear what it sounds like with the real deal. So, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. I hope you found this interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up on YouTube because that always helps. If you're a speaker aficionado and you have your preferences and your speaker brands and things that you like, leave information down in the comments down below. It might help someone who's thinking about doing something like this to make a better choice.
Surfing USA by the Beach Boys on Amazon Music.
So to show you I put my money where my mouth is when it comes to talking about replacement speaker cones, because I have made videos before about how you can't replace speaker cones on other models, but on this model we can. What we have here is a freshly rebuilt 2401 amplifier and a freshly rebuilt 2402 AM/FM tuner. When the rebuild is done and we do the long-term testing, we do 16 or 20 hours of continuous play on these to make sure they're going to behave themselves, we use our NuTone 2411 and 2412 speakers for the first half of the testing because fair is fair and you want to make sure everything works properly, and we need the intercom controls to make sure that that's all good and right. But the last half of the testing, I like it to sound a little better here at the shop, and we look forward to when we have these kinds of pieces of equipment here to listen to every day, and so we need to do something a little better. So let me show you my speaker choice for something like this, my personal preference, my personal speakers of choice. What we have here are a pair of Pioneer HPM 100 stereo cabinet speakers. These are from the early 1970s, and if we go ahead and take the grills off so you can see what's behind them, you can see these are a far cry from the 2011 and 2012 speakers that NuTone specified for their 2400 system. And what we have here is a 12-inch woofer, we have a mid-range, we have a super tweeter, and we have a tweeter and a super tweeter here with little crossover adjustments. The Pioneer HPM 100s, they are studio monitor quality speakers, and they were designed by the same fella that designed the JBL 100s. You really want some sound and you really want some volume out of an amplifier, you need a pair of speakers like these. I've had these forever, and these are by far my favorite pair of large cabinet speakers that I own, and yes, I do own other ones also. But it's only fair that our 2401 amplifier be allowed to drive some truly great world-class speakers, and that's what we really have here. So let's see what's playing now. We can only hear a few seconds, but that's okay.
I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you.
That might be a little too soft for me, but I'd like to play something different. But copyright, you know how it goes. But this just shows, now you wouldn't necessarily drive 10 pairs of these on your 2401 amplifier, but it's certainly powerful enough to drive one pair of them, and it's certainly powerful enough to drive improved 8-inch mid-range, higher quality speaker cones than what it came with when it was new. So it has a lot of flexibility, and I personally enjoy the way it sounds. It has all of that tubey goodness while it's playing through speakers, and the tubey goodness is because tube amplifiers, by their very design, the tubes impart a certain amount of distortion into the sound, and that's what gives it its warm, fuzzy feeling when you listen to it. And people really like that, so it's very popular. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that you can actually drive better quality speakers with your 2400 system. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or on the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.